welcome to the Heartful Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Keating. In this podcast, we talk about it all, our parenting, our partnering, and our professional lives, because they are all a part of us, and we were never meant to do this alone. Hello, podcast listeners. Welcome back to another episode of the Heartful Parent Podcast. I am grateful that you are here. And I use that word grateful with a lot of intentionality because not only is it true, I love that y'all listen and that you keep coming back week after week and that you email me and tell me what you love about the podcast, but I'm using that word grateful because that's really what we're talking about today. Gratitude, health, and happiness. Now, why? Well, if you are based in the U.S., it may seem fairly obvious why we're talking about those things this week. And that's because, again, for those who are U.S. based, it is Thanksgiving week. And Thanksgiving, for most of us, is a pretty big, significant holiday. It is one of my very favorite holidays because it is not based in gift giving, although don't get me wrong, I love gift giving, but it's based in this idea of gratitude. And that's really the approach that my family has always taken with this, is really pausing and recognizing what we're grateful for and sharing that gratitude with the people that we love. So I know many of you also take a similar approach and love, this day, this celebration. But here's the thing I want to be really clear about. Even if you are not US based, it's still really important that we're talking about gratitude, health, and happiness. So if you are Canada based and Canadian Thanksgiving is well past, it's not too late to talk about this. It's still a timely conversation. And if you are based elsewhere in the world, I know we have listeners in the UK, in Australia, in South America, and I don't know where else. In fact, if you hail from some other part of the world, email me and let me know where that is. But wherever you are, whether or not Thanksgiving as a holiday is something you celebrate or recognize or even know anything about, the conversation that we are having today is still relevant. It's still timely. It's still critical. And in fact, I love talking about this as we move into, rapidly move into 2024, because I think when we think about our year, and I'm not a big fan of New Year's resolutions, but, when we think about what we want from our lives and we want from the year, for me, there are kind of two resets throughout the year. And the first one is September, when the school year starts. And the second one is January, when the calendar year starts. And I really like thinking about the role that gratitude plays in my life at those times of the year, because I think it just invites the right energy into my world. So that's what we're digging into today. So, wherever you are, join me. Let's chat. Okay. Now, I recognize that many people, when they listen to podcasts, and this might be true for you, you're driving in the car, you are cooking dinner, you're scrubbing the toilet, you use podcasts as a way to fill the space when you're doing other things, usually sort of more menial tasks. If that is you, then this next invitation that I'm going to make, put it on pause and do it when you're back, at a place where you can sit down. If you are hanging out on the couch, relaxing in, one of those rare moments of pause or peace, go ahead and do this exercise right now. But what I'd love to do before I dig into the connection between gratitude, health, and happiness is invite you into your own exploration of gratitude. And what I mean by that is grab a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper. And I really prefer that, that it's done in writing. That lights up different centers in our brain than if you type it out on your phone or your computer. Grab a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper and just start by writing a list of 10 or 20 things or people that you're grateful for. preferably, if you're going to put people on the list, preferably people who you'd be willing to share that gratitude with. Right, that you'd be willing to say to them, I'm grateful. And after you write your list, or as you're writing your list, I want you to ask yourself this question, like, how easy does this feel? How good does this feel? Right? Even if you have crappy stuff going on in your life right now, or hard stuff, or challenging stuff, or you're, experiencing grief or loss, or the holidays are challenging for a variety of reasons, I still want you to do this exercise and ask yourself as you go through, what does it feel like for just a few minutes to sit in that gratitude? And then the sort of extra challenges, if you wrote people down, what would it feel like? Or would you be willing to reach out to those people and share with them what you wrote or why you're grateful for them, right? To sort of boost them up a little bit. Okay. With that invitation at the forefront, I want to dig into sort of what gratitude is. I know it seems obvious, but I want to talk about it, and what some of the benefits of gratitude are. So gratitude is often thought of as the natural antidepressant. Cicero, way back when, called gratitude the mother of all human feelings. And there's a quote, and I have to confess that I don't know who said this, but the quote is, we don't get the desired results unless we nourish the seeds properly, right? When we want to bring abundance and, awesome things into our lives, we have to nurture that abundance. We have to nurture those awesome things. And the way that we do that is with gratitude. I also think it's true in the space of parenting, not just in our lives in general, but specifically with parenting, that if we want to nurture abundance in the space of parenting and bring awesomeness into our lives as parents, we have to nurture gratitude. Gratitude for our situation, gratitude for our children, and we're going to talk more about this as we go, and just kind of this general perspective on the world that comes from a place of gratitude. So why? Why do we want to do that? Well, I'm going to share the research because you've heard me say it before. I love research-backed, science-based information. And here's what we know. There are psychological benefits to gratitude, physical benefits to gratitude, and social benefits to gratitude. All right, so what are the psychological benefits? Well, gratitude enhances positive emotions and thoughts for all of us, right? My guess is that if you've gone ahead and done that exercise that I invited you to do, at least for 30 seconds or a minute or 5 minutes or however long it took you to make your list, you were probably feeling pretty positive or more positive than you had in the minutes preceding. It helps us be more aware and awake to what's going on around us. I think when we start to recognize things that we're grateful for, it's sort of like what I like to call an upward spiral. We see something we're grateful for, it helps make it easier to see things that we're grateful for. And when we see something that we're grateful for, then again, now we're like, oh, now there's more things that I'm grateful for. It kind of puts us in an upward spiral of positive emotion. And it increases our self-satisfaction and our moods, right? And it enhances those moods. When we come at the world from a place of gratitude and abundance rather than a place of scarcity and awfulness, we feel better. I mean, that should be fairly obvious, right? I'm going to actually skip the physical piece for just a minute because I want to talk about the social piece, and then we're going to dive into some research that really blew my mind when I first learned of this over 3 years ago. But the social benefits, when we are grateful, when we approach our children, our partners, our friends, our colleagues from a place of gratitude, we tend to engage with better communication and increased empathy. And when we have better communication and increased empathy, that naturally makes stronger personal relationships or professional relationships. Right? There's communication and empathy build connection, and connection builds stronger relationships. You have heard me talk about connection time and time again. And when we do that, That means that within a group of people, again, whether it's your family or a professional group, it just makes people more joyful, more likable. We see in workplaces that where gratitude is the foundation or the scaffolding on which that team is built, that team members get more involved. They feel more engaged. They feel more valued. It results in better romantic partnering. When we cultivate what Dr. John Gottman calls a culture of appreciation, when we work hard to cultivate that in our families, everything thrives, right? My husband and I have been very intentional about that. And so I say thank you to him all the time, even for things that, yes, he should be doing anyway. And he says thank you to me all the time for things that, yes, I should be doing anyway. But that gratitude and knowing that somebody appreciates or notices that I'm showing up and doing, things, looking out for our family, that gratitude feels really good when it's directed towards me. And I can see that it builds connection with my husband when I direct it towards him. We also know that expressions and feelings of gratitude lead to perceived social support and likability, right? We see ourselves as having supports around us and being more likable. And that leads to improved group dynamics, to community, and all of that, everything I've just mentioned, feeds and fuels stronger interpersonal connections. Okay. This all is fairly obvious, but it's also based on research, which I love. Now, I promised you that I was going to share that third benefit, the physical benefits, with you, but I want to give you some foundational information first and talk about what we call our D.O.S.E chemicals or D.O.S.E hormones. And these are chemicals, hormones, probably not getting the right medical term there, but things that are released in our body on a regular basis. And we want to actually make sure that we're getting an adequate dose of them on a daily basis. But they're not called D.O.S.E chemicals because we want to get a dose of them every day. They're called D.O.S.E chemicals because that's actually an acronym. So what does it stand for? Well, the D in D.O.S.E stands for dopamine. The O stands for oxytocin. The S stands for serotonin. And the E stands for endorphins. So I want to talk about each of those independently and how we boost them, how we get our daily dose of D.O.S.E. So dopamine is released into our bodies when we are well rested, when we listen to music, when we meditate, when we spend time out in the sun, when we get exercise and move our bodies, and also when we feel like we've accomplished something during the day. So I am a perpetual, habitual list maker and lover. And I don't know if anybody can relate, but I will actually add things to a list that I've already done just so I can get the pleasure of crossing it off the list. That is dopamine at work, right? That feeling of accomplishment. I'm getting a little hit of dopamine, every time I cross something off my list. And when I feel accomplished, right? So that's the D of D.O.S.E, dopamine. Oxytocin is released when we connect with others, physically and or emotionally. It happens when we tell someone how much we care, how much we appreciate, it also happens when we meditate, and also when we cuddle or hug somebody. Here's one of my favorite ways to get oxytocin I don't know if I've told you all this. I live in a small zoo. We have 3 dogs, 3 large dogs, 2 cats, and a one-eyed, one-tooth hamster. Yes, there is a story there. I'm not going to tell it today. But that's 6 animals in my home. And the best news is that when you pet a dog, when you pet a cat, snuggle a hamster, and even when you watch fish, that releases oxytocin. That is one of the reasons why many doctors' offices have fish. Did you know? Little known fact. But yes, those are the things that release oxytocin. So connection and animals, which is really just another form of connection, right? So that's the O. Serotonin. This is increased when we actively practice gratitude. Thus, our loop back to the subject of today. When we practice gratitude and when we pay attention to the food that we put in our bodies and to our gut health. right? It impacts or influences our gut health. There are certain foods, and I think this is pure coincidence that it sort of happened this way, but foods like turkey, which just happens to be the primary food eaten by Americans on Thanksgiving, of course, along with things like mashed potatoes and I don't know, green bean casserole. But turkey seems to be the staple that nearly every family has. And if if you're a vegetarian or vegan, then a lot of families have like tofurkey, because turkey, again, is such this like emblematic food of Thanksgiving. And ironically, turkey releases serotonin. It's shown to release serotonin in our bodies. Salmon does the same thing. Most of us aren't eating salmon on Thanksgiving, but if you are, good for you. You are releasing your serotonin. There are other foods out there that do this as well, but those are two that we sort of are talked about regularly. So that's the serotonin. So gratitude and turkey, that's all you need for serotonin. All right, and then the E are endorphins. So these primarily happen when we exercise, when we move our bodies, when we increase our heart rate, when we dance, when we go for a walk, when we move in any way, right? So I am a big fan of morning exercise. I know that makes some people cringe, but I generally try to get in a workout before my day really starts. First of all, if I don't, it won't ever happen. I'll make every excuse under the sun to not do it. But also, it starts my day out with a dose of dopamine, right? Because I feel like I've accomplished something. And because I've been listening to music while I exercise. And it's that movement in my body, which is releasing endorphins. So it kind of feels good all around. We also get a hit of endorphins when we eat things like chocolate and spicy foods. So for those of you who really like a good spice, in your Indian food, I always order it mild. I know my husband likes it super spicy. That's an endorphin release. Also, when we meditate and when we laugh. Okay, now honest question. When is the last time that you laughed? I saw something on Facebook the other day, posted by a friend. I have no idea if this is accurate, but just go with me. Go with it for a minute. And it said that the average adult laughs less than 10 times per day. I would be willing to bet that it's much fewer than that, right? That most of us can go through a day with a little giggle here or there, maybe. There may be days where you don't even get that. But that most of us aren't laughing even 5 times a day. And a good belly laugh, like those good, like just I'm laughing so hard, like I'm snorting or something's coming out my nose. How often does that happen? Like pretty rare. But that is, what a fabulous way to get your dose, right? Your dose chemicals, that releases those endorphins. All of those things that I just mentioned should be a part of our regular self-care and the way that we teach our kids to care for themselves. It's, hugely helpful when it comes to things like anxiety and depression. And I was talking about these a lot during the pandemic because we all had a significant lack of dose. And it was like we all needed to really focus on getting our daily dose. But it plays so nicely into gratitude because when we are grateful, when we practice gratitude, when we have an active gratitude practice, that helps us get those dose chemicals, serotonin in particular, but some of the others as well. And that has a direct link to our physical health. Okay? No joke. And this is where science really comes in. Active gratitude practice and, correlated with that, getting those dose chemicals does some really phenomenal things for our bodies. Okay, here's some of the things it does. It helps us build a stronger immune system. People with active gratitude practices have been shown to have stronger immune systems. It has been shown in at least 16% of patients that they've felt like they had fewer body aches and pains, right? So they actually use gratitude in pain management. And yeah, 16% isn't like enormous, but it is certainly statistically significant. It also has helped optimize blood pressure and cardiac function, right? So if you've got high blood pressure, gratitude isn't going to hurt it, right? It helps with better sleep and wake cycles. Okay, here's some other things that it does specifically to the brain. It actually results in a higher volume of gray matter in the right inferior temporal gyrus. Now, if you're a doctor or a medical professional, please feel free to hit me up on email and tell me what the right inferior temporal gyrus really is or does. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But what I do know is that part of the brain helps us with wiring and firing new neural connections to the bliss centers of our brains. And those who have those active gratitude practices have a higher volume of the gray matter, which makes it easier to wire and fire those neural connections, which makes it easier to reach the bliss center, which makes it easier to feel good, right? I already mentioned this, but it enhances dopamine and serotonin, right? You can think of those as your happiness chemicals, all of those 4 things we talked about. The limbic system, so another thing that it does is with the limbic system, which is buried deep down in the middle of the 2 hemispheres of the brain. It's where our amygdala lives and the hippocampus lives. And if you've ever heard me talk about the hand model of the brain, or the ways, that like what's going on with our brains when we get really dysregulated, or if you've seen Dr. Dan Siegel talk about it, who originated the hand model of the brain, or anyone else, when we get really dysregulated, that amygdala is at play. And the reason that it's at play is because that limbic system is where our emotions and memories live. It's where they are regulated. It's where they're activated. And those light up on brain scans when someone is feeling or practicing gratitude, right? So like our positive emotions, our ability to regulate our emotions and our good memories, all of that gets activated with feelings of gratitude. And that's nothing but good. All right. We know from research that gratitude has been shown to help the brain reduce fear and anxiety because it actually regulates the stress hormones. So it doesn't just fill us with good stuff, but it regulates the stress hormones. And it actually fosters cognitive restructuring by evoking positive thinking, right? So we can actually rewire our brains for better cognitive performance with positive thoughts, okay? Now, let's just dial this in a little bit further and show you by the numbers, a little bit more of the numbers. So gratitude is related to a 10% improvement in sleep quality in patients with chronic pain, 76% of whom had reported insomnia. 19% of those who have chronic pain, patients with chronic pain, reported lower depression levels. In healthcare practitioners, which, my goodness, who was stressed more than anybody during the pandemic? People in healthcare, right? And they found that when healthcare practitioners kept a gratitude diary for 2 weeks, it produced sustained reductions in perceived stress, like 28%, and depression, 16%. Pretty phenomenal. It is related to a 23% lower level of cortisol, which is our primary stress hormone. It led to a 7% reduction in biomarkers of inflammation in patients with congestive heart failure. 2 different activities, so counting their blessings and writing letters of gratitude, reduced the risk of depression in patients who were at risk for depression by 41% over a 6-month period. We know that dietary fat intake has been reduced by as much as 25% when people are keeping a gratitude journal. And you guys, the list goes on and on. It affects our blood pressure. It affects or improves feelings of hopelessness in 88% of suicidal inpatients, right? Grateful people have lower levels of hemoglobin A1C, which is a key marker for glucose control and plays like a significant role in diabetes. The list goes on and on and on of the research that's been done and the incredible results that have been seen, like statistically significant results that come out of a regular gratitude practice. Now, if that doesn't like sell you on it enough. I don't know what will, but I want to share with you another study that was done, because it turns out that not all gratitude practices are equal, right? Are created equally. So this was a study that came out of U.S.E, which is the University of Southern California, and they were looking at like whether all gratitude practices are created equally, and the answer is no. And so they took a group of people, they divided them into 3. They had one group that like did nothing, like just kind of kept living their lives the way that they were. They had a second group who they called generalists, and they had them every day write down 5 things that they were grateful for, which I know is sort of like the exercise that I had you do at the beginning of this. And then they had the third group, they called them specifists. And the specifists wrote one thing that they were grateful for, but then wrote 5 sentences about why. That's a different approach to this. And what they found is that this second group of people, the ones who wrote one thing down with 5 things that they were grateful for, really had better outcomes than the people who did nothing and the people who were generalists. So what it showed is that the specifists were more elated, excited, and alert, right? That's what they were reporting. They felt less tired, less sad, and less lethargic. And that their overall sort of positive demeanor and experience in the world improved. There were some other results that came out of this when they were comparing sort of the people that did nothing to the generalists and so on and so forth. I don't think we need to go into the details of that today, but it does kind of beg the question, like, how are you practicing gratitude? And although I love the exercise of writing down just an exhaustive list of things that you're grateful for, or even a list of 10 things like I invited you to do at the beginning of this podcast, it might be interesting. And this is actually something that I do and I have done for the last 3+ years, is every day write down one thing that you're grateful for, but then explain why. Write down why. And see, do it for a month. Do it for 6 weeks and see how you feel. Which brings me to sort of where I want to end this conversation, which is, okay, we know gratitude's great. You've told us all the reasons it's awesome, but like, how do we bring it into our lives more actively? So the first idea I want to share with you is go back to the episode where I talk about family meetings, because one of the key components of a family meeting is a gratitude or appreciation practice and sharing appreciation for our family members. And I think that really goes a long ways towards building that culture of appreciation, that you heard me talk about earlier, and is a great contributor to getting our daily dose. Some other things that you can do, or, that are worth kind of thinking about as you move through this week, maybe this day, if you're listening to this on Thanksgiving, the last month of the year, and as you move into 2024. So from a parenting perspective, where are all the spaces and places that you can show gratitude for your children? Not just gratitude for things they do, although that's good too, but also gratitude for who they are, right? Who they're showing up as in the world. The more places and spaces that you can show appreciation and gratitude for them, the better they're going to show up. Okay, some other ideas. Gratitude letters. I mentioned at the beginning of this, writing down people who you are grateful for. Are you willing to write them a letter and tell them why you are grateful for them? Right? Keeping a gratitude jar where every day you drop in 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for. And at the end of the year, you've got, whatever 365 times 2 or 3 is, things that you're like, wow, that's a lot of gratitude. One of the things that we do in our family is I have whiteboards outside the door of each of my children and on the closet door that my husband and I share. And I can't say that I do it on a nightly basis, but several times a week at least, I will walk by, or my husband will walk by, and we will write an appreciation for our daughters. They each get on their own board. And my husband and I will also write appreciations for one another. And what's been really cool is watching our daughters come in and write appreciations on those boards as well, on our board, or they'll write an appreciation for each other. I mean, it really does make a difference. So just thinking about ways that you could bring gratitude into your life, not just on Thanksgiving, not just on one day a year, but how can you practice this for yourself, for your life, with your children, with your partner, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? And in doing that, invite abundance, amazingness, awesomeness, positivity, and all of those things into your world. I'd love to hear how you are doing it, how you've been doing it, or what your plans are for doing it moving forward. Please email me and share with me, Christy@theheartfulparent.com. I'd love to hear. And just two things I'm going to wrap this up with. The first is, in thinking through those practices, I would challenge or invite you to decide on one that you're going to do this week. So maybe that's choosing someone from that list that you wrote and writing them a letter of gratitude. Maybe it's getting some whiteboards, at your local Target or on Amazon or whatever, and putting those up in, places in your home, like outside your kids' rooms, and starting that gratitude practice. What are you going to do to start actively putting this into practice and to make it something that helps you get those daily dose chemicals, something that feels good and invites abundance into your world? Email me, let me know what it's going to be. My second comment or thing that I just want to let everyone know about is that if you enjoyed this, if this kind of information is helpful to you, these are the types of deep dives and sort of in-depth conversations that we have inside the Heartful Parent Academy, which I'm just going to say I'm so grateful for, and grateful for the parents who are in there and what they have shared with me and what they're putting out into the world based on what they learn in there. So, so grateful. And I would love to have you join us there. So if this kind of conversation resonates and feels good to you and you'd like to dig in deeper and speak with other parents about it and get other ideas for how to do it, join us. Right now, the Heartful Parent Academy is only $27 a month. If you join now, you can use code TRIAL7. You will get your first month for only $7. And the price is going up after the first of the year. So on January 1st, 2024, the price is going up. But if you join now, you lock in your pricing. I will note that there's all new content in there this year. The Academy has received official licensing and approval from the Positive Discipline Association. So there are 13 phenomenal pre-recorded modules that really guide you on your parenting journey. There are deep dives, like a deep dive about gratitude, in there for you to, dig into and digest. And then I provide twice monthly group coaching and once monthly individualized coaching through an app on your phone called Voxer. So you get lots of individualized support. So to join, go to theheartfulparent.com, click on Academy, click on Join, and use the code TRIAL7. But do it before the end of the year if you want to get the current best pricing. All right. On that note, I am going to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate, a happy holiday season if you celebrate, and I just wish for you now and in 2024 more gratitude and more abundance. I am grateful for you. Thanks for joining me today. Have a great week.